Hello, everybody. You're listening to Crunch Squad. It's a podcast within a podcast wherein we break down the rules, the mechanics, and the number crunching behind this wonderful game of Dungeons and Dragons. I am Ned Wilcock, your host for Crunch Squad, and today I'm joined by a very munchy fellow.
Crunchy munchy. Josh Lorimer. Happy to be here,
The man
Ned.
himself. Happy to have you here. We are going to be doing, for this Crunch Squad, something that was suggested by a couple of our audience members. And no, we haven't forgotten about you. I know we got those requests a while back, but we got a pretty big backlog of things to talk about on Crunch Squad. But today, we are talking about the Artificer, the newcomer to the D&D 5e scene. We decided that we do want to go with this one right now because, we've got the 2024 Player's Handbook coming out just next month as we're recording this. But the Artificer isn't going to be in that updated handbook.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, because they've got all of the core 12 are going to be updated in the 2024 version, but I guess they figured that the Artificer is recent enough. In fact, they just barely updated the entire class as of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So they've got enough of kind of that modern, sort of refined 5e flair going on in this class that I guess they figured they didn't need to update it anytime soon.
It always feels like the odd kid out of like the main classes, because I feel like every time they relaunch like 4th edition, 5th edition, this new online that they did, and then the Artificer always comes up after everybody, but everybody's always asking for it. They're always like, come on, just give us the I want to be an Artificer. Like, it was a huge, it's always been like I feel like it's always had like a mainstream relevance in terms of just the appeal. Yeah,
in fact, the path that it took to get to where it currently is, originally the Artificer was just going to be a wizard subclass.
Yeah.
Like, if you listen to the first campaign of Critical Role where Sam Riegel plays an Artificer, that's the version they're using. It's just the Unearthed Arcana version of the Wizard subclass. But eventually the folks over at Wizards decided this is special enough that it needs to be its own thing. And it definitely is its own thing in quite a lot of ways.
Absolutely. It has one of, I think, the deepest customization ability of any class.
Yeah, what we're going to find as we start digging into this is that it's got tons of great offensive abilities, it's got great defensive abilities, great healing abilities even. So you can flex the Artificer into being basically whatever type of party role you want it to be. Now, starting with some of the basic stuff, the more boring stuff, but it's handy to have this context. You got a D8 hit die. You're proficient in light, medium armor and shields, simple weapons, a whole bunch of different types of tools. And so this is, again, leaning into, you can flex this class in a bunch of different ways depending on what role you want to fill.
They're definitely not making you as squishy as wizards, even though it's kind of like a wizard offshoot.
And we've got another thing that we see is different as far as like the spell casting. When it was a wizard subclass, they had a full, all 9 levels of spells in their spell chart. And in the finalized version, it's a half casting class. Very similar to the amount of spell casting that you would see with a paladin or a ranger, for example.
Yep. But not as sparse as a warlock.
Yeah, definitely not as sparse. We see that they're able to get away with having this reduced spellcasting ability because of the versatility they get with some of the very early on class features that we're going to start talking about. In fact, let's just get into those right here, right now. Starting at level 1, you get Magical Tinkering. And this is very akin, I think, to the Artificer's version of a Prestidigitation.
That's what I was just
Thaumaturgy.
thinking. Yeah, like a very generic cantripy kind of magic.
Yeah, you get a whole bunch of different effects you can use. What's fun about this is you touch a tiny non-magical object, and as an action with your Tinker's tools, your Artisan's tools, your Thieves' tools, you are able to imbue a fun little just kind of sensory effect into it, like making it shed bright light for 5 feet and dim light for an additional 5 feet. Whenever a creature taps it, it can emit a recorded message that can be heard up to 10 feet away, up to 6 seconds long. You can have a just sound effect, a static visual effect appear on it, all kinds of just fun little quirky things that you can imbue into this little object. You can imbue a number of objects equal to your intelligence modifier, and it lasts indefinitely, but if you want to infuse something new, then the oldest thing that you infused, once you've reached that limit, it just loses its effect, and it's kind of a conveyor belt effect that you got there.
It's interesting to me, because I do feel like they do a really good job of flavorfully describing the artifice of this class without like solidifying it down too hard. So like you really do get a lot of like wiggle room on how magical your artificer is and how technical they are. You can really just be a gear nerd and just be building stuff, or you can be like a magical tech wizard who's conjuring mechanical. Like they really don't like hold your hand too strong with like the definitions, but the artifice is the key. Like it's like it has to do with it's object-based magic. It's like it's items and how you're enhancing or imbuing them.
Yeah, there's this entire call-out box that they've got where they talk about the magic of artifice. And I feel like you don't often see in a class description where they talk about this is kind of how your magic looks. But here, I'm just going to read some of this. As an artificer, you use tools when you cast your spells. When describing your spell casting, think about how you're using a tool. For example, if you cast Cure Wounds using alchemist supplies, you could be quickly producing a salve. But if you cast it using Tinker's tools, you might have a miniature mechanical spider that binds wounds. But the effect of the spell is the same either way.
Super cool.
And another really interesting detail that comes along with this is a very specific kind of finicky thing that interacts with the Artificer's spellcasting is you have to have your Artisan's tools or your Thieves' tools in your hand while you're casting your spell. So anytime you cast a spell as an Artificer, it has a material component required even if it didn't beforehand.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's it. That is somewhat hampering, but also like kind of very cool as well. I like the idea of thinking about like being in a pinch and you've got like a screwdriver in your mouth and you're like, you know what I mean? You're like moving around, like getting things done. It's kind of fun, tweaking things as you go. It's very, there's so many fun creative ways that come to mind of how to utilize or explain that's why I do like as detailed as they are, it does feel like they do keep it fairly open-ended on just how wild and funky you can make those details. Yeah, and that's also something they encourage as you're like preparing your spells. One thing that's nice about Artificer is it's not a known spells class, it's a prepared spells class. So every morning you wake up and you pull out all of your little alchemists, all of your little Artificer tinker things that you've put together, and you've got this little ray gun, and in the morning you're like, okay, is this going to shoot acid today or is it going to shoot healing magic? And you're able to just select which spells you want based off of what gear you have on you. It's very cool. Now, after we have just our basic spell casting, we get to the infuse item feature. And one other thing I do want to mention as far as the spellcasting goes is Artificers are ritual casters. That is an ability that they have very similar to the Wizard, and it's an intelligence-based caster as well, just like the Wizard. But then it's at level 2 that we get into the thing that I feel like is really the bread and butter of what makes the Artificer, which is infuse item. That's fun. A lot of classes have to wait till 3 to get like something really interesting and diverse, but you get loads of options just starting at 2nd level. Yeah, and essentially the whole premise of infuse item is you take an object and with your Artificer knowledge, with your Artisan's tools, you're able to infuse magic into this mundane object. And it's kind of in some ways akin to having a second spell list that you can draw from, except it's independent from your spell slots. This is why we're able to have kind of that limited half spell casting, is because we have all of these magic items you're creating that you can get those effects from without needing to use spell slots. Now, they're only for a day, I think, right? You have to choose what you've infused, and you have a limited number of infusions. And it's almost like you're building a prototype. Like it's not a finished product. So the infusion can be removed. So this is some of like the finicky stuff about how infuse item works. When you gain the feature, you pick 4 Artificer infusions. There's a list of those, very similar to, like I said, to having a spell list. You pick 4 of those infusions. Those are the ones you know, and you learn additional infusions as you gain levels based off of the chart that they have in the Artificer table. And whenever you gain a level, you can replace one of the infusions that you previously learned with a new one. So again, very similar to spellcasting in this way. And whenever you finish a long rest, this is your time that you have to infuse your items. You can touch a non-magical object and imbue it with one of your Artificer infusions, turning it into a magic item. An infusion works only on certain types of objects, as specified in the infusion's description. If the item requires attunement, you can attune yourself to it the instant you infuse the item. And if you decide to attune to the item later, you must do so using the normal process for attunement. And that's an option that you have, like when you create this magic item. If you want to use it for yourself, you can tune to it right at that moment, or you can give it to somebody else to use instead. Very cool. That's a super cool way to like be a buffer in your And like it's one of the, you can enhance someone else's weapon and stay out of the line of fire while still having like half of your magical ability enhancing another player, which is that makes them super overpowered, and it can be really fun to watch as a player.
Yeah. Some other cool things about those magic items is once you've infused an item, that infusion lasts indefinitely, with a few caveats here. If you die, the infusion vanishes after a number of days equal to your intelligence modifier. It also vanishes if you lose your knowledge of the infusion itself. If you swap out that infusion for a different one, that infusion disappears. And when you finish that long rest, you can infuse more than just one item at a time. And the maximum number of objects, there's a column in the Artificer table that tells you how many you can infuse at a single time. You have to touch each of the objects, and each of your fusions can only be in one object at a time. So if I want to, like, one of the things you can do, for example, is just touch a regular weapon and make it more powerful. You can add a +1, +2 bonus to it. You can only have that particular bonus on one weapon at any given time.
Right. You can't, like, boost up a bunch of armor and put it all on.
Yeah. And very similar to that, each individual object can only hold one infusion at a time. Then also very similar with, your just magical tinkering that you have. If you have a certain number of items already infused and you want to infuse another one, you can do that, but then the oldest infusion ends and the new infusion then comes into effect. So yeah, this is, like I said, one of the things that I feel like makes the Artificer unique enough that they needed to separate it from being just a wizard subclass into being its own thing.
Oh, and the amount of time you spend picking spells as like a wizard or a sorcerer, like that, imagine half that time is going to be spent choosing infusions. Like, and it's really fun to let your character, like the type of Artificer you want to make, can really be a great way to like help narrow down your options as to like what type of things you want to infuse and how you want to utilize those infusions.
And there's too many of these infusions for us to go through.
There's 20. There's like 20
yes.
Various infusions.
But we've selected a couple that we feel like are unique that we want to point out, because generally sort of the pattern for infusing an object is you choose a regular mundane object, maybe it's a suit of armor, maybe it's a weapon, maybe it's a helmet, maybe it's a pair of boots, and you just take that object and make it cooler in some way. But there are two particular, we've each selected an infusion that we want to point out as being kind of unique amongst all of those. The one that I want to point out is Replicate Magic Item. What's great about this is you're able to just recreate existing magic items from the Dungeon Master's Guide. Whenever you take this infusion, you learn how to make one specific magic item. There's a few different tables, so at second level as an Artificer, you can create things like an alchemy jug or a bag of holding or sending stone.
Crazy. You can just have a bag of holding at second level. Is nuts. Like, that's awesome.
You just make it yourself. It's great.
Yeah.
And then as you continue to level up, like at level 6, you can start making things like Boots of Elven Kind, give somebody advantage on their stealth checks. Up at 10th level, you've got things like a Hat of Disguise, just change your appearance at will. All the way up to, we have a 14th level, is the highest level of replicable magic items. And at that point, you're getting things like Dimensional Shackles.
Or Ring of Free Action.
Yeah. So as you continue to level up, you can just make all of these really fun, really iconic magic items just because you're an Artificer. It's pretty great.
It's wild. I've played 2 Artificers on 2 different campaigns, and I'm not gonna lie, I never looked at the replicatable items table.
Ooh.
I totally limited myself on what I could do because this is crazy.
And, from one perspective, it's like, it's possible to get those magic items in other places.
Right.
So, if you have a cool DM who is eager to hand out magic items, you might not need to worry about it as much. But there are some very, very unique things that you can get as an Artificer as well. So maybe focusing on those might be beneficial as well.
Yeah. Can I jump into the infusion I'm most excited about? So this one's, I love this one just because I love little guys, and my favorite infusion, especially because there's no level requirement for it. It is just, so you could also attain this at second level if you had a super cool DM who let you have a crystal worth at least 100 gold points.
Yes.
Or a gem of that kind, but a homunculus servant. So this is super cool. You essentially craft a familiar, like a tiny construct, and one of the things I like about it is it's got both like speed and fly. It's got fly speed and like regular walking speed. So this like in one of my campaigns is like a steampunk magical campaign. I had like a backpack homunculus servant that could like hop off and become a drone that flew around and like did reconnaissance for me and stuff. It's very cool. It comes with the homunculus servants. It's like its own whole creature. It basically has like this autopilot of just being set to evade and just like not engage and avoid, getting into trouble. And so it can make saving throws on its own and all of that, but it's not going to make any kind of real attack or spell without your say so. And it takes a full bonus action, I believe, to command it to cast a spell, but it can cast a spell as if it's you, as if it's which is super, super cool. So you can do a touch spell from a far distance away if your homunculus servant is in range of like your ally, if you're trying to heal them or stuff like that. It's really, really interesting. It makes the versatility of touch spells and different things wildly more interesting. You can really kind of be creative in how you want to like utilize your different abilities through the homunculus servant. So but on its own, it has one action called a force strike. It can make a ranged weapon attack. It's really, really little. It's not super strong. Ned, maybe you can help explain. This always confused me and my like DM every time I went into this, but its whole proficiency bonus deal. Do you know what that's talking about?
So let's take a gander at proficiency bonus.
Because it'll say like skills. Its skills are like a perception plus PB times 2.
Yeah. So the homunculus has a proficiency bonus equal to your proficiency bonus. And so it's kind of a flexible thing. As your proficiency bonus increases, then we look at, like you said, it's got perception 0 plus your proficiency bonus times 2. So if your proficiency bonus is 3, it gets plus 6 to its perception. And then when your proficiency bonus increases, it keeps increasing as well.
And that impacts its attack ability. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, because the force strike, it has to hit, it is your ranged spell attack, which also increases with your proficiency bonus, but then the damage it does is 1d4 plus your proficiency bonus in force damage.
So at higher levels, that can actually get to be comparable.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I really, really like, for me, the big meat and potatoes of the homunculus service is the channel magic thing like you were talking about. If you are an alchemist subclass, which we'll talk about the subclasses in a little bit, but if you're an alchemist subclass and you gain access to cure wounds, for example, as long as your homunculus servant is within 120 feet of you, you can cast Cure Wounds, which is a touch spell, and you don't have to be next to the person who's being cured. So it takes, there's still a benefit to Healing Word in being like a bonus action instead of a full action, but you can get that extra bump of extra hit points from a range, which is really cool.
And it's considered a reaction. I didn't realize that. Here I'm looking at it on the website, which I had always considered it a bonus action, but here it has it listed as a reaction.
Huh.
You can, so as a reaction, you channel magic, the does a spell you cast that has a range of touch. That's interesting. That enhances your casting ability like magnificently. Like that's...
Yeah.
If I understand that correctly, and I feel like I'm not because it sounds overpowered to me, you could technically cast 2 spells each turn.
That's pretty great.
That's nuts. So, Homunculus Servant, very worth checking out if you're going to be an Artificer. And it doesn't have to be like a weird gargoyle thing. Like I feel like sometimes homunculus servants get kind of like pigeonholed as the one type of thing, but it could be a mechanical owl. It could be all kinds of cool, like fun objects or creatures.
Yeah. And you get to have just a fun little guy that follows you around that also is really, really useful. Look at that.
Yep. And depending on the DM, like it could have as much or as little personality as you like. Like that's all up to you. But that's my favorite of the infusions for sure. Yeah, my friend Christian, if you listen to Improv Tabletop, you know him. He had the homunculus servant as well. Awesome.
And it was a grand old time.
What was his?
It was just like a little lantern, I think it was. Just a little floating lantern.
That's cool. I hadn't thought about essentially you're making a Pokemon, like, right? Like you're you're just making a Pokemon. It can be an object or a creature or I love it. I never thought about that. I'm gonna start
ice cream cone if you want it to be.
It could be an ice cream maker. It could.
Yeah. I'm into that.
Okay, cool. So that's literally we've just gotten to second level.
Yeah, this is all the stuff that really sort of sets the stage for the abilities that your Artificer has. From here on out, they're much more minor upgrades that you get along the way, but some very significant ones. But this is where the complexity we get with the Artificer comes, is really in those first 2 levels. I guess also at 3rd level you get your subclass, but we'll get into the subclasses in just a little bit.
Cool.
The next thing that you get also at 3rd level is the right tool for the job. You've learned how to produce exactly the tool you need. When you have your Thieves tools or your Artisan's tools in your hand, you can magically create any other set of Artisan's tools. It just appears within 5 feet of you.
Wow. So like forge tools, any kind of crafting.
Cartographer's supplies, all of these, like whatever you happen to need in the moment to be able to create that particular thing, you can just, create them right in that space next to you. It lasts for an hour of uninterrupted work. Oh, it takes an hour of uninterrupted work to create this, and you can do that during a short rest or a long rest. And they last, I believe, indefinitely. Like a lot of this stuff with the Artificer kind of lasts indefinitely until you take an action that would cause it to not be there anymore. In this instance, when you use the feature to create another set of tools, the old tools vanish.
It's not fully removed from magic. That's like this is not just a gears and cogs and, steam engine kind of thing. There's a level of innate ability that's coming from the Artificer themselves.
Yeah, just this really fun blend of magic and technology. Let's see, level 4, we start getting our ability score improvements and pretty standard stuff. You get those also at 8th, 12th, 16th, and 19th levels. At level 6, we get Tool Expertise. Your proficiency bonus is now doubled for any ability check you make that uses your proficiency with a tool.
Expertise is kind of a newer thing, isn't it? Like that they're updating classes with.
Yeah, because originally it was basically just if you're a rogue and if you are a bard, you get expertise, you choose a certain number of skills you're proficient with. But now we see it also in the Artificer here as well. There was, I guess, some precedent for that in the rogue, where you could choose to have your proficiency with Thieves tools be doubled with your expertise. But this is any Artisan's tools that you have, you can get double your proficiency with.
That's really cool.
And then looking at level 7, Flash of Genius. This is also a very good support option that we have baked right into the core class. You've gained the ability to come up with solutions under pressure. When you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes an ability check or saving throw, you can use your reaction to add your intelligence modifier to that roll.
That's huge.
That can make all the difference in plenty of instances, just that little extra boost.
How would you flavor that as a DM? Like someone's adding their intelligence to someone's ability check.
Yeah, I could see if you're using it on a saving throw, for example, like you've got, the fireball is rapidly expanding, it's about to hit the wizard, and the Artificer at the last moment is like, jump behind that tree over there.
Yeah.
And, they're just scanning the battleground, seeing what all of the options are, having that little flash of genius moment to be able to share with somebody else.
That moment in the House MD where he finally figures out how to solve the problem.
Everything just goes into slow motion and you're Sherlock Holmes braining your way through it.
Yes, exactly. That's awesome.
Yeah, and this feature, you can use it a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier per long rest.
Gotta boost that intelligence.
Yes. This is so many great things trickle down from having a high intelligence score with the Artificer here. Next, we look at a magic item Adept. You've achieved a profound understanding of how to use and make magic items. This comes at level 10, by the way. You can now attune to up to 4 magic items at once instead of just 3. So you're creating all of these magic items. You gotta have the attunement slots to be able to actually use those. So I think this is, off the top of my head, this is the only way that I'm aware of that you can attune to more than 3 magic items.
Yeah, I don't know of any other way, but I think it's cool because there's and as the levels go on, like this boost comes back again and again and again. And you can look at it one of 2 ways, right? Like you can look at it as like the Thanos version where you're just adding gems to your gauntlet and getting more and more powerful as yourself, or you can look at it as like you get a new, I guess it's attunement is your thing though, right? Like you can't.
Yeah.
So these have to be to you. This isn't. I was thinking in my head some of this is giving more stuff to other people, but no, attunement's your thing. Like so they are kind of like encouraging you to make stuff you're using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's the 2 sides of the coin with being able to infuse the things is you can use them for yourself or for your friends. Do you want to be the buffer, the supporter, or do you want to make up for the fact that you don't have as many spell slots as the wizard does? That kind of thing.
That's really interesting.
And the other thing that you get at 10th level Magic Item Adept is this ties in with the normal magic item crafting rules, like separate from infusing items. If you're crafting a normal magic item using the normal magic item rules, it takes you a quarter of the normal time and costs you half as much the usual gold, though it does specifically have to be a common or uncommon magic item.
Wow. That's 10th level, though. You should be an adventuring hero at that point in your career.
Yeah, and at that point you have enough money, you have enough connections, you maybe even have like a home base with a forge built into it and everything. So this is just yet another way that you can continue to get more and more magic items.
That's really cool.
Next up, we've got at level 11, the spell storing item. You can store a spell in an object. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can touch one simple or martial weapon, or one item you can use as a spell casting focus and store a spell in it. You choose a first or second level spell from your Artificer spell list that requires one action to cast. You don't need to have this prepared, and then it's infused into this weapon or the spell casting focus, and then the creature who's holding the object can take an action to produce the spell's effect from that object using you, the Artificer, your spellcasting ability modifier. So
bonkers.
You can give the fighter a sword that has Burning Hands infused into it, and even if the fighter has a -3 intelligence, they still use your intelligence score when they cast Burning Hands from this sword.
Yeah, because you made it. That's so cool. It's like it is the magic innate in it is dependent on the intelligence of the person who crafted it. I love that.
And the spell stays in the object until it's been used a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier, twice your intelligence modifier, or until you use this feature to store a spell in a different object.
Very cool. Starting at 11, that could be pretty high. Never mind. I was like, what's 11 plus 11? But that's not right. It's the intelligence modifier, not just your level. Okay.
Yeah. Going up to level 14, Magic Item Savant. You can now attune to up to 5 magic items at once.
Jeez.
And additionally, you ignore all class, race, spell, and level requirements on attuning to or using a magic item. So one example we came up with in the beginning of our Skull and Shackles campaign is we found a couple of these statues of Sarenrae that can only be attuned to by clerics. Well, if you're an artificer, surprise, surprise, you can use that now.
Good pull. Good pull. Yeah, that's a great example.
So you don't have to have a Cleric of Besmara on your ship in order to be able to use those.
I wonder how you work that out thematically. Like, is it your ability with Artifice is such that you can essentially, like, using mechanics, like, lock into another class's spellcasting ability? Like, you find a way to, like, build an item that channels faith.
Yeah, you're like hacking into the mainframe. How can I simulate faith using technology?
Ooh, like a steampunk hacker artificer? That would be super cool. Oh.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting the ideas flowing in my head now.
The 18th level is just like, have another magic item.
Yes, at 18th level, Magic Item Master, you can attune to up to 6 magic items at once. Double the magic items that anybody else in the game can attune to.
Just be like clinking and clattering around as with all your magical items.
Yeah, it's especially like when you get up to level 20, the Soul of Artifice. At these really high levels, it's like you know everything there is to know about magic items. So listen to this.
By the way, at 18th level, your infusions known is 12, and the amount of items you can have infused is 6. So, like, it's actually keeping up with your level of infusions, too. So you can just...
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, you can just make all of your own magic items and attune to every single one of them all at once. So then at level 20, I really like this one. You have developed a mystical connection with your magic items, which you can draw on for protection. You gain a +1 bonus to all saving throws per magic item you are currently attuned to. Again, if you're attuned to 6 magic items by this point, which you very well should be, that's +6 to every single saving throw you make.
Wow.
So you're basically adding double your proficiency bonus, because you do have +6 proficiency at that point for all of your saving throws. You're getting at least 12 on the ones that you're proficient with for sure, +12 at least on your saving throws. Pretty wild. But then the other thing you get at level 20, if you're reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you can use your reaction to end one of your Artificer infusions, causing you to drop to 1 hit point instead of 0.
Wow.
And again, you've probably got 6 infusions going at this point, so that is 6 times that you can drop your hit points to 1 instead of 0.
Wild. That is wild. I love that. I mean, 20th level, you're basically like demigod, right? Like that's... Very cool.
Become very, very difficult to kill at 20th level as an Artificer. And so those are all of the core class abilities we've got for the Artificer. And at this point, I want to just kind of briefly discuss each of the 4 subclasses we've got here to explore a little bit of even more of the versatility that you get as an Artificer. Starting with the Alchemist, this subclass is all about creating magical potions and chemicals and stuff. And this is a very healing and support-centric subclass.
They refer to it as the oldest of Artificer traditions.
Yeah, with this one, you get access to stuff like Healing Word and Ray of Sickness. You not only have the buffing aspect of being a support class, but also the debuffing aspect of being a support class. Death Ward, a very good support class spell to have. Mass Healing Word, very good. But also Cloud Kill, very good debuffing spell to have. And also just damage dealing spell to have.
And then the best feature, in my opinion, of the Alchemist class is the experimental elixir.
Yeah, you create this bottle full of some kind of liquid. You don't know what's in it until somebody drinks it.
And it's got honestly, none of these are bad, are they? Like boldness, that, like, it's all good things. It's just, you roll on a table to see what happens. You could randomly just transform.
Yeah.
Using the alter self spell.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember though, do you roll when you create it or when it's drunk? Experimental elixir, it's triggered when someone drinks the elixir, yes. You roll, they go, okay, I'm trusting you, Artificer. I'm trusting that you got my best interests in hand. Let's see what happens when I chug down this bottle you made.
Oh, that's wild. I love that. That's a little bit of like a dipping your toes in like the wild magic, which is just always entertaining and fun.
But again, everything's beneficial, so no matter what, you're gonna get something cool that happens from it. The Armorer subclass, this is Iron Man.
Oh, I love this. Is what I did this with one of my. I've actually made 3 Artificers. I'm remembering. I had a Dragonborn one. I had an elf who I called him an Electronin. He was like a Ronin with Watazashis instead of Waga.
Oh my goodness!
And everything was around like electricity spells and but I remember I did Armorer because I liked the idea of having like samurai armor that was that kind of went with the blades and everything. And so I kind of, as much as this is like it sounds like it's a defensive, like a tanky thing, I think it can pair really well with an offensive caster too. Yeah,
you look at again, I just have to stress how much this is literally just, you want to be D&D Iron Man, be the Armorer Artificer, but you look at everything that Iron Man can do with his suit. It deflects bullets. He can fire lasers out of his fists. He can fly. Like, these are all things that you can do as an Armorer Artificer depending on what you want to specialize in.
Well, and it goes deeper. So you have you're an Artificer. You choose your Artificer subclass of Armorer. Then you have to choose your Armorer subclass of Armor Model. So it goes. Do you want to be the Guardian? Do you want to be the Infiltrator? That's so much versatility. It's so cool. I almost think you have to have an idea of who your character's going to be before you go into this class, because if you don't, you'll be uncertain of what to choose for a long time. It's so detailed. And then we get to the Artillerist, which is very different from the first two. You're just creating magical guns and cannons and stuff. Yeah, worth noting, the Armorist gets extra attack at 5th level. I think that's the only one that does, if I'm reading correctly. I believe the Battlesmith does. Let me check just to make sure. Does he? Yes. Okay. The Battlesmith and the Armor both get extra attack. So if you want to be a very punchy Artificer, those are the ones to go with. Yep. But yeah, it's kind of surprising to me actually that the Artillerist doesn't get extra attack, but I guess then again, you don't need to attack a ton of times because you've got magical cannons that do a lot of damage with one hit. And I mean, you technically could fire twice with a Homunculus Servant. There you go. Yeah, you add the Homunculus Servant to any of these subclasses, and it's just going to be great times for everybody. Yep. Except for the people who are fighting against you. So yeah, Artillerist, all about making firearms, and then the Battlesmith, this is like being a Beastmaster Ranger, but with a metal
Beast Companion.
Ooh, so okay, this is the one I know very little about. I don't know that I've read much about the Battlesmith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you choose to become a Battlesmith, you create something that is known as a Steel Defender. And very similar to how, if you look at the Beastmaster in the updated versions of the Ranger, the Steel Defender has its own stat block. It becomes more powerful as you, as an Artificer, become more powerful. You can have it attack for you. You can have it go fetch stuff for you. And again, similar to the Homunculus, you can flavor it to be pretty much whatever you want. So when Christian played a Battlesmith, he just had Metal Blastoise. That was his Steel Defender that he was walking around with.
Wow. This is super cool. You essentially, with this and the Homunculus Servant, you're kind of just a creature caster. Like, you've got just like guys following you, like a team. That's so cool.
Yeah, and Christian himself was playing a Warforged at the time, so it was just the metal guy with his two little metal friends walking around just blowing stuff up and having a great time.
And like the Homunculus Servant, the Steel Defender does use your player bonus, your proficiency bonus.
Proficiency bonus.
So,
yeah.
But it has a lot more oomph behind it than the Homunculus Servant does.
Mm-hmm. And there are some real fun, like, little minute things about how the Steel Defender works that I think makes it superior in some ways to the Beast Companion. Like, if you have the Mending spell, it's a cantrip. You can cast it for free. You cast it on your Steel Defender, regains 2d6 hit points.
Wow, that's cool.
And then another one is, at the end of a long rest, you can create a new Steel Defender if you have your Mist tools with you. If you already have a Defender from this feature, the first one immediately perishes. The Defender also perishes if you die. So it's much easier. There's, when your Beast Companion as a Beastmaster Ranger dies, it's an emotional moment. Whereas with the Artificer, you could just be like, don't worry, I'll rebuild you after my next long rest. It'll be fine.
Also, it's hit points level with you, like which is very unlike the Beast. They have the hit points of whatever beast they are, right? Like this guy, it's your 2 plus your intelligence modifier plus 5 times your Artificer level, and it has a number of hit dice equal to your Artificer level. So it has hit dice of its own. Like, it's pretty wild. Like, this is definitely a beefy construct.
Yep. The Steel Defender. It's right there in the name.
Yep. Very cool.
So, dang, that is the Artificer as it currently exists. Maybe we'll get more subclasses down the line. Maybe they'll update it with the 2024 rules. Who knows? But even as it stands, just a very strong, very powerful option to choose.
Dude, there's it's wild because I haven't like made an Artificer in maybe 6 months to a year. But I'm still playing one, but I haven't gone back and looked at, like, have they added stuff? Have they changed stuff? So even looking back over this with you right now, I'm like, man, they improved some things. Like, this is a very well-refined class. Super interesting, super rich. I literally don't think you'll ever feel like you'll make the exact same Artificer every time, because you could just be so incredibly detailed with how unique you want it to be.
One thing I actually do have on mind right now that I just want to plug real quick is, like we said, the core Artificer is very versatile, but if you find yourself wanting to just really, really specialize in a certain aspect of this, there's a company called Mage Hand Press that makes a whole bunch of third-party classes for D&D 5e, and they have 2 classes. There's the Alchemist and the Craftsman that are basically like 2 different forks of what an Artificer could really, really specialize into. So if you want to be tossing around bombs, if you want to be making potions that can heal or alter people, you can play as the Alchemist. Or if you want to just make a ton of really cool magic weapons and armor that you can use in battle, then you can go with the Craftsman. So those are just a couple you might be interested in checking out if the Artificer is sounding cool to you, but you really, really want to specialize.
And you can always multi-class. That's always an option.
This is true. You play as the Steel Defender, multi-class into Fighter to get some of those special fighter bonuses. Just lots of good options there.
Oh yeah, very cool. Awesome. This is a very crunchy class. Thank you for having me on as your fellow cruncher.
No problem. I mean, somebody who's played the Artificer as many times as you have, I feel this was a good choice.
I didn't realize how many times I'd played it. I just kept thinking of I had the Electronin, I had the Dragonborn that was very tanky, and then I did a android, like a Warforged Artificer that was purely just team buffer. I used all my infusions on other people's gear, and that was really fun. It's really satisfying watching your party members succeed because you gave them something cool. Like An underrated D&D experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the joy that you see on a player's face when they get a cool new magic item, imagine being able to be the one who evokes that joy.
The giver of joy. That's Artificers, absolutely.
So yeah, that is the Artificer. Just want to real quick shout out thanks to Tyler Call and Wesley Ederling for suggesting that we break down this class here. And thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Crunch Squad. We hope that you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed digging into all of the deep gears and cogs of this class. Now, from wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a review. It helps boost our ratings and our mood throughout each podcast service. It puts our show in other people's recommended feeds and also into the hearts and minds of the people. And it lets us know that you like what we're doing and makes us all very happy. So reviews, good times. We appreciate them. Now, if you want to write something maybe a little longer than a review, we also have our email, icastfireball2020@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe you could suggest a Crunch Squad that we could do in the future, just like our friends here did.
Ooh, suggest a Crunch Squad and then tell us what you did. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us about something you want to learn more about or an issue you ran into in a game and how it affected you or what you enjoyed about it. I think that would be great flavor and impetus for us to dive deeper into stuff.
We'll put it on the list, and hopefully, maybe we'll get to your suggestion sooner than 2 years after you send us the first email. Apologies to our friends who have had to wait so long for this Artificer episode. But let's see. Also, if you want to get some of the most recent up-to-date content from all of us here, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter with the handle icastfireball20, where you can get possible sneak peeks of upcoming episodes, some interesting insights from the players and GM, and behind-the-scenes shots of us making this incredibly fun little show here. At this point, it's the part where I plug my own podcast, which still feels weird all the time. Do you ever get used to it, Josh?
No.
Okay.
Not really. I mean, no. Check out Improv Tabletop, our sister podcast, run by Ned. They're doing all kinds of super fun, cool fusions of adventures with different things. And currently, if I remember correctly, you guys are doing an Avatar: The Last Airbender, Disney World kind of adventure thing going on.
It's, imagine if Varric from The Legend of Korra did what Walt Disney did and just made his own theme park. That's what we're doing right now.
Super cool. Definitely check that out and give it a listen.
And check out our Crazy Uncle podcast, Sneak Attack and Titans of Altera.
Absolutely. That's my prospector laugh.
Yeah, man, now I'm just remembering Miscreant. That was a very fun, creepy little giggly character.
Season 1 Titans is some of the best podcasting I feel like I've ever done as a dungeon master. I'm very proud of that. The rest of it's fun too, but season 3 is not done yet, and it's been it's been out for 3 years. So go slow.
We'll figure it out someday. But yeah, those aside, feel free to subscribe, and share this show with your friends and fellow wacky adventurers. But until next time, I've been Ned, your host for Crunch Squad, and today I've been joined by the crunchiest.
Crunching away.
Keep the fire going, everybody, and we'll see you all next time.